I found that I was really loving history and government and law and all the things that I was teaching, and I loved my students, but my students didn't love the history and government and law that I was teaching. So I wanted them to see it in the way that I did, in the light that I did. And the traditional methods of teaching that I had been trained in and had worked through for the first several years of my career didn't really allow me to ignite that passion in them. So I started looking for other methods and other resources, and found it utilizing technology and the furniture in the room and whatever we could get our hands on. I didn't have any new furniture when I shifted, and I didn't have any new furniture even when I last left the classroom. We had the very traditional high school, chairs with attached desks that come around, and I had a big, heavy teacher desk at the front of the room, and that was it. But I wrote grants and was able to get enough funding to secure some flat screen TVs that were on rolling carts. And so I used those to set up stations around the room and just took the desks and circled them in like semicircles around the stations. And then I was able to reach out to some companies like 3M, gave me some whiteboard, sticky whiteboard, like rollout stuff. And I put that on walls all around the room to create more space for my students to brainstorm and build. And we just kind of used what we had. I think if I were still in the classroom, I'd be continuing to seek out new furniture and I always said to my students, ideally we would have a coffee machine in here and couches and low tables and even space to sit on the floor. And I think we were kind of working toward that. And I think if I were still in the classroom, I would continue to work toward that. You do have to work with what you have, and it's really a matter of asking the students, how can we get creative with this? How can we build this into something, a space where you want to learn? So I involved them in that design, and that made a big difference. I also took my teacher desk and moved it to the back of the room so that it wasn't taking up space at the front or in places where the students needed it, and I just filled it up with supplies, and it became a supply drawer area. Corporations have already figured this out, and they know how adults want to learn and where they want to be when they're working. They want to be in places like Starbucks. I visited the Google campus recently, and that work environment is incredible. And if adults want to learn in that environment, why wouldn't kids, right? So why not make the leap to schools? I think the difficulty is that we're operating in schools that were built decades ago, and there's no hope to knock them down and redesign them in many places because they don't have the funding or the resources or anything. So they have to work within this building that was designed based on this very traditional model of education. So if that's the case, we can still work with what we have. We can involve students in the process. We can ask them how they want their classrooms to look. And then you use what you have to gradually get there, like I was doing in my classroom. It's not gonna happen overnight, but if you involve them and get them to be creative, they're gonna be more invested in their learning environment, which means they're gonna be more invested in their learning. And we all will have better relationships with our students if we're asking them how they wanna learn, because they'll start to trust us more. One of the struggles that I'm seeing and hearing from teachers is that they want to be convinced to give students more choice, to use technology in creative ways, but they're also feeling the pressure to get through a loaded curriculum between the beginning and end of the year. They're also feeling the pressure to meet growth standards and hit test scores that are required by their state or their district. And so if there isn't a guarantee that this new method will help them hit those requirements, is it worth the risk for them as a professional? So I think what we need to be willing to do is allow teachers to take risks and tell them that it's more important that the students have a learning experience that's going to stick with them than it is that they hit a certain test score. We need to be willing to say that, and it's hard. But if we don't, we're going to stay in this old model, and we're preparing students for a world that doesn't really exist anymore. I was a history teacher. I mean, in college, I majored in politics and education, and then I went to law school, and I stayed in the classroom. I have no formal education in technology, but the best way to get kids thinking and collaborating and creating is with technology. So I've developed an expertise in technology because it was the best way for them to learn. I wanted them to feel the same way about history and law and government as I did, so I had to meet them with the medium that they want to work with. And I mean, that's how it developed. I'm excited about redesigning learning spaces. I'm excited about the concept of fully integrated digital citizenship into every single class, because if they're using technology for everything they do, they need to learn how to do it well. But I think the common element with all of those is that students need to have choice in how we're going to do those things, or they're not going to be successful.